Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the walk. Left tail.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Ryan Pepiot, one of the top two pitching prospects in the Dodgers system, a top 100 prospect on many lists across baseball. Ryan, thanks for joining us. What's it like to hear top 100 prospect next to your name?
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's nice to hear, but I try not to look too much into all the rankings and reports and all that. Yeah, I think you go down a rabbit hole if you start reading into too much of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wondered, because I imagine, some guys say, hey, I don't hear it, I don't pay attention. I imagine it's hard to avoid at some point, right? Like, you got friends or family members like, hey, dude, you're on the list.
Yeah, I have plenty of messages from my friends from high school, college, and friends now. That aren't as much in baseball, and they're just sending me stuff left and right, and it's just like, all right, guys, like, thank you, but I don't really care that much.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear. First time you've been on our show, I'd love to hear a bit of your story. Kind of an interesting, as I was reading a little bit about you, multi-sport athlete. It sounds like in high school, played quarterback on the football team as well.
Yep.
You end up going to college like 20 minutes from where you grew up. So tell me a little bit about sort of your athletic journey and kind of how you got to this point.
Yep. So I grew up in Westfield, Indiana. Played 3 sports through my sophomore year of high school: football, basketball, and baseball. And then I just played football and baseball my last 2 years. And then I wanted to go where I was going to get a good education if baseball didn't work out. And then I wanted somewhere where I was going to be able to get the opportunity to play early and pitch a lot. And Butler was going to give me the opportunity to compete for a rotation spot where some others maybe are on the bigger side. They were like, yeah, you're probably just going to be in the bullpen to start. And I was like, I haven't pitched a whole lot. And as just a pitcher either, like I played shortstop or third base when I was not pitching. So like being the first time I was going to be a pitcher only, I needed to throw a lot of info. Kind of how I ended up at Butler. And then being close to my brother, who's a junior at Butler now, actually. And I wanted to be able to go home and see him play football or baseball when I had an off day or something.
How were you as a football player? I got to ask. I mean, you're a starting quarterback, it sounds like. I mean, were you any good? Did you have any possibilities of playing football?
Yeah, I was okay. I was pretty good. That was kind of humble, but I did have opportunity to play at Ball State if I wanted to.
Okay.
There's a couple others that recruited me, but I was more on the baseball side because 300-pound dudes coming at me that are probably faster than I am or pitch. There's more longevity in baseball.
Yeah, I imagine like as pitching and being quarterback, those two things in some cases sort of go together. I mean, are there other guys in the Dodger system on the Oklahoma City roster? Are there other football guys that have similar stories to you that you know of?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that were multi-sport athletes, especially football players. Not necessarily everybody was quarterback. We got a couple linebackers, receivers, safeties, and stuff. But there's a handful of guys that were multi-sport athletes.
Are you the best quarterback on the Oklahoma City roster, you think?
I'm going to say yes because I don't know anybody else who would be quarterback, but, I'm open for discussion.
Awesome. Well, as you're going through that process, you end up at Butler, and you kind of hinted like, hey, I wanted to go somewhere I could get an education, somewhere I could pitch. When you were coming out of high school, in your mind, how realistic was Major League Baseball for you as a dream? Did it seem like a pipe dream? Did it seem like something you were like, if I work hard enough, I can achieve this?
Definitely something I felt like I could work hard enough to achieve. Coming out of high school, it was just more of a dream. And then as my freshman year went on, I threw pretty well. My sophomore year, things were going good in the fall. And throughout the season, then I ended up in Cape Cod League after my sophomore year. And then that's kind of when it started to get.
And you end up a 3rd-round pick to the Dodgers. What was that moment like? I mean, you're from Indiana. Like, it sounds like you stayed close to home. So, you knew you were going to have to travel somewhere once you got drafted pretty much. But what was it like to be a 3rd-round pick for the Dodgers?
It was a crazy moment. Being with my family, some of my friends came over to my house and we were like watching it on TV. But the crazy thing was like I pointed over my brother to get a video because my mom was going to want it for sure. And I basically did at him, and then I had my phone ringer on, and the TV was like a second delay based on like the online stuff. So my phone blew up, and my mom, what's going on? I was like, all right, it's happening. It's going to come on the TV in like 5 seconds. And it did. So, but it was an awesome moment.
So did you know? I mean, like, had you had conversations with the Dodgers ahead of time where like you sort of knew when their pick came up in the third round that was going to be you?
Yeah, I had talks with my advisors at the time. They kind of had told me like, "Hey, this is happening here. Don't tell anyone." But happening in like 4 picks or something like that. And going into the draft, like the Dodgers were pretty high on me, so I knew whenever one of their picks came up, there was a possibility.
Awesome. Well, your calling card as a pitcher, for people that aren't familiar with, is fastball and then a changeup. And the changeup in particular, you know, when you can't read Ryan Pepiot's name without somebody talking about the changeup. It's the best changeup in the minor leagues. People saying, you know, it might be one of the better changeups in all of baseball. Where did that come from? Like, when did you realize that you had a pitch in the changeup that was so unique and so special?
I didn't start throwing it until after my freshman year of college. Okay. So I kind of just didn't really have a changeup and realized I needed one. So it just was kind of like a trial by error. Throw a bunch of things, see what grip I liked, and figure out, all right, this one clicks, this one works for me, and then start throwing it and then hone it back in from long tossing it all the way to bringing it back into playing normal catch with it, using it in games. And then something clicked, I guess. It worked.
Were you the one that realized it? Did you have a catcher or a pitching coach that came up to you at some point and were like, hey, dude, whatever you just did with that changeup, keep doing that?
It was kind of, I had a pitching coach in the summer ball during my freshman year. He's like, hey, like, let's work on a changeup. Just like when you go home in the fall, work on a changeup. And so that's kind of just what I did. And then whatever I did to figure out the grip, trying everything possible, basically like everything up on the fridge and hoping something sticks. That was my, and I found the one that did. And it was just like, hey, like this plays very well off your fastball. Like keep going, keep doing this.
Yeah.
And then it just, as the more and more I threw it, the more comfortable I got with it, and the better.
Awesome. Well, this offseason, it seems like you kind of went through that process again. You know, this is another story that's come up a lot, which is the slider/sweeper that you've been working on and tweaking. I'm fascinated by the idea of sort of building a pitch in this new era, drive line, that kind of stuff. So how does it work? Like, how do you decide, hey, I want to throw a slider? The Dodgers obviously have sort of become synonymous with this sweeper pitch, the Blake Trinan pitch. How does it work when you say, I want to be able to throw a pitch like this? You just start testing grips? Are you looking for spin numbers? Like, what is that? Where does it start and how is it going?
It's a combination of everything. I did throw like the pitch that Blake was throwing, and then I kind of just like was so inconsistent with it. They're like, hey, just go back to your hard slider, and then like what last year. So it's kind of on the shelf for me at the moment.
Okay.
It's something like I have in the back if I need it. But at the moment, like I'm not really throwing it. I'm throwing my harder slider from last year, but I'm also like getting good enough with it where I can manipulate a little more, so I can slow it down a little, get a little bigger, closer to a sweeper. But I just have way more control. So it's kind of like it's a lot of combinations of things to answer your question, where you have to look at the numbers that you want, but also you have to make sure it fits into your arsenal. It's like you could take the numbers like a Blake Trinan slider, but that pitch is a unicorn pitch. That's disgusting. And it doesn't necessarily play in everybody else's arsenal, because someone may throw from a lower arm slot or a higher arm slot and they can't make that pitch move the exact same way. And does it come out of their hand where a hitter sees it and may actually swing or be able to get people out? Yeah. So that's kind of the thing. It's trying to chase the numbers, but also making it a competitive pitch. And then the final thing is getting a hitter in there and seeing it. It's like, hey, I see it out of your hand, or no, that's a really good pitch.
Got it. And so for you then, you've sort of scrapped the new slider and maybe gone back to your old one, but it sounds like maybe a slightly modified version of the old one.
Yeah. It's like I've gone back to my old one where I'm throwing a hard slider, but then I can manipulate it a little bit, and kind of it's just something more comfortable for me that I can be more consistent with.
Got it. And so for you, primary, somebody who hasn't seen you pitch, fastball, changeup, slider, are those kind of what you're going to see most of the time? Yeah. Okay. This is a question I love. Oh, go ahead.
No, I have curveball, and then like the sweeper's still like they're like, hey, you have the curveball, you also have a sweeper. Like, we're not like saying don't throw them ever, but like put them on the shelf for now. Like, we can always add more tools to the toolbox, but what you have right now, like, keep doing you.
Okay, so here's my favorite question I like to ask the pitchers, and it's as you can predict, I usually get the exact same answer. But if you've got a full count, bases loaded, you come into a game and you need to throw one pitch for a strike to be an out pitch, Is it fastball? Is it changeup? Is it slider? What's Ryan Pepiot throwing in that situation?
I'm gonna throw the changeup.
Okay. Most guys say fastball, and they laugh at me when I ask. They're like, "Of course I'm throwing the fastball," but you're going changeup.
Yeah, I'll go changeup. If I need an out, like I'm gonna throw the changeup.
Love it. Love it. Okay, let's talk sort of bigger picture, double A, triple A. Last year, you're at double A. You absolutely dominate. You come up to triple A and struggle a little bit. Home runs get the best of you. This year, though, 3 starts in, you've got an ERA of 1.69, 14 strikeouts, and 10 2/3 innings. Well, first of all, I guess one question is, what has the jump been like between double A and triple A? And second of all, do you feel like something has clicked? Like what shifted where last year there were some struggles, this year you've been absolutely dominant?
I think last year the biggest thing is like I went through a lot of mental stuff because like I was pitching really well in double A and I was really, really excited to get called up to triple A. And I was like, dang, I'm really, really close. Like, could this be a thing? And then like I think all in the back of my mind I was like pressing really hard because I was like, I'm this close. Could I do it? And, doing that, I was already putting myself behind the 8 ball. I was just trying way too hard. I wasn't pitching. I was throwing. I'd end up walking a couple guys and then leave something over the plate. And PCL, if you leave something over the plate, you're not playing in the most friendly pitcher parks, to say the least. But I think for the biggest thing was just going back to being myself, getting ahead of hitters, throwing strikes, pitching. That honestly the biggest thing that I've been doing this year, and not necessarily clicking, but it's just more pitching, is mixing speeds, taking my early outs when I can, and then when I get the opportunity to get a strikeout, go for it. But I mean, the end of the day, as the job as a starting pitcher is to give your team some length and go deeper into as far as possible, and then also give your team the best chance to win a ball game. So that's what I've been trying to do, and not trying to do too much.
And I imagine it's a confidence thing too, that now that you're there and you've seen yourself be successful at the AAA level, it probably is a little bit of a snowball effect where it's like, yeah, now I know I can strike these guys out. I know I deserve to be here. I know I belong here. And sort of, I imagine that confidence piece plays a big role as well.
Yeah, there's definitely the confidence booster as well. Last year it was like, dang, I'm out there. Here we go again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's just like not letting things snowball for me. Somebody gets on, who cares? Something happens. It's baseball. Give up a broken bat single, like who cares? It's baseball. Yeah. So there's definitely a booster and definitely the feeling of like, okay, I've been here before. I can do this. Like, I belong, kind of thing. Like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned last year you being so close. I mean, you're so close again. You're in AAA. You're starting the season in AAA. Obviously, you were in big league camp during spring training as well. What are your goals for this season? I mean, is it sort of major leagues or bust? Is it like, are you just sort of letting things come to you? Like, how do you navigate that? It's always interesting because in a situation like the Dodgers, it's great to be a top 100 guy and it's great to be a top prospect, but organizations like the Dodgers, you know, you're in good company on those lists. It's not just you that's on those lists. There's a healthy competition, I've heard, amongst the pitching prospects especially. So how do you evaluate yourself this year moving forward and your chances of making the Dodgers at some point?
Like you said, it's a great organization to be a part of. There's a ton of great guys, great players, but I also like everyone's a good human being, good person to be around. So there's nothing better than that. But at the end of the day, all I can control is what I do. I'm not the one making the decisions to call me up or call somebody else up. All I can do is control when I get the ball every 5th day or 6th day with the off days in AAA. But go out there and execute my pitches, because once the ball leaves my hand, I have no other control. So I think the biggest thing that I've been trying to focus on this year is just like control what I'm able to control, because if I do that, then I can hang my head at the end of the day with whatever happens.
Have the Dodgers had conversations with you about like, hey, you know, there's a chance that you might get called up this year. It might be as a starter. It might be as a reliever. Or do they kind of just not have those conversations and one day you might just get a phone call and say, hey, you're getting the call up and this is what it's going to look like?
Kind of, it's more like a combination of both. They're like, hey, do your thing, and like we'll hopefully see you. But other than that, it's not really. It's more like wait till Travis, our manager here, calls you into his office and says you're going. Thing, or you get a phone, or however it works, honestly. But I don't know. They don't. The coaching staff doesn't always dictate everything either. So it's more, hey, just do your thing, and we'll see.
Would you be comfortable as a reliever if that's what the major league club need? I mean, I know guys like Walker Buehler, they get their first taste in the bullpen. Is that something that you feel like you'd be comfortable in?
Yeah, I think so. I know when it's like, obviously during big league camp, they've talked like, hey, like most of the time when guys get called up, especially pitchers, like even if you're starting, you're probably not starting. So a lot of times they've worked with having like an opener start before a game in the minor leagues, so that you do have to come out of the bullpen and like actually have that experience, so that not the first time you ever pitch out of the bullpen in pro ball that's just not a recipe for success. But so I've had the practice with it. I'm sure I'll have a couple more experiences with it this year. But I'll be comfortable with whatever the team needs.
It's awesome. Okay, last question. I'll get you out of here. I love talking to minor league guys in part because there's so many great stories, players that you're playing alongside in Oklahoma City that the average Dodger fan might not be familiar with. I mean, I'll ask you one pitching question and one hitting question. On the pitching staff, I mean, it's a pretty talented group down there at AAA. I mean, some minor league teams are more talented than others. The Dodgers, it seems like they could field a major league rotation in what you guys. So maybe who's a pitching a player on the pitching staff, either starter or reliever at Oklahoma City, that the average Dodger fan might not be familiar with that they should be?
Oh, gosh. I mean, our whole pitching staff, everyone's disgusting on our pitching staff. I mean, there's one stat, I actually looked it up. We out of the 28 or 30 guys we have on our roster, there's only 8 that don't have any big league time on our team. So yeah, there's that for you. Jeez.
I'll rephrase the question a little bit. If you had to hit, who's the one guy on the AAA roster that you would want nothing to do with as a hitter, standing in the box against him?
Oh, okay. Reyes Maranta.
Okay, and why is that?
I mean, his fastball is like 98, coming from like a low slot, and then a slider. I'm going to pass on that one.
Okay, all right. On the opposite end, you're on the mound. Who's the one guy on the Oklahoma City roster you don't want to see come to bat against you in like a simulated game or something like that?
That's a good one. I'm gonna go Pilar.
Okay.
I mean, he's had 7-8 years in the big leagues. He knows what he's doing. He's got a very mature approach up at the plate. So it's just gonna be it's a tough out every single time.
Let me pause real quick and ask you a question, because Pilar and Jake Lamb are two names that Dodger fans are familiar with, guys that have been up at the majors, and now they're in AAA, and by all accounts, they hit the cover off the ball in spring training. They've been doing well at AAA. You've got other guys. Carson Fulmer is another fascinating story, as just like individual people that are on that roster. What's it like for a guy like you who hasn't tasted the big leagues yet to be able to brush shoulders with guys who have not only been there, but I mean, Fulmer obviously unique because of his draft status, but I mean, Jake Lamb, Kevin Pillar, these are guys who have had like actual real success at the major league level. What's that been like for you?
Yeah. It's been really exciting. Kevin is an awesome dude, like amazing guy. Jake the same way. And Carson, actually, I go to breakfast with Carson about every day. I probably actually have breakfast in about like 10 minutes after we're done with this.
Tell him he should come on our show at some point. All right, plant that seed for me.
I'll plant that for you. But honestly, like, the Dodgers do a good job with every single person. It's like the character that they bring in of people is like they're not bringing in terrible humans. Yeah. Everyone's a good player first, and then also like so Kevin and Jake and Carson and everybody else on the team, they're all sharing their experiences. And it's like, hey, I tried this. Maybe you want to give this a shot, or like be leery of this, or try this, or something like that. It's just basically like they have the experience, and they're just like shedding light on what they've gone through. And maybe like basically like the way they put it is like, hey, what you're going to go through or what you've been through, we've all done it. We've all had the same experience. It's basically like pretty similar with every single person, no matter if you're a pitcher or position player. It's just been helping me out for sure, and other guys on the team.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, hey, Ryan, I know we joked about before we came on about the travel schedule you guys have had getting from New Mexico to Sacramento. So I appreciate the time. Best of luck the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll see you up in LA at some point this year.
I appreciate it.